This presentation provides a list of the cultural dimensions that are used in this framework, and it describes each of them in detail. You can use it to learn the names of the features and the behaviors and attitudes that are associated with each one. Then you can identify cultural features in a new context or person using the information in the toolkit. There are 8 cultural dimensions in the toolkit. Each dimension is represented as a continuum with 2 ends. The ends of the continuum indicate 2 cultural features, different ways of looking at each dimension. One example of a cultural dimension is attitudes towards time. People who come from places where punctuality and predictability are considered important tend to organize their activity carefully with a focus on deadlines. In places where conditions are fluid and changeable, people are multitaskers with a more relaxed approach to managing their time, responding to changes as they come up, and putting in some extra work at the end if need be. Each approach is appropriate in a certain kind of environment, and each one works well for people in that environment. But when people from the 2 environments come together, differences in their expectations and behavior can cause misunderstandings and conflict. The following slides show the 8 cultural dimensions in the toolkit. The slides describe the cultural features and identify the strengths and weaknesses of each one. The achievement birthright dimension describes people's attitudes towards status. In cultural contexts where achievement is emphasized, status is earned through accomplishment. Talented young people can move quickly up the ladder of success. Achievement environments are relatively egalitarian, and young people express themselves freely. In achievement families, children may debate their parents' policies and have a voice in decisions like where to go on vacation. They're likely to make decisions about marriage and careers based on their own preferences. Achievers tend to have a can-do attitude and a goal of making things happen. They can be forceful and may push their way through obstacles they encounter. An advantage of working with achievers is that you can rely on them to get things done, and you know that people at the top got there thanks to expertise and hard work. At the same time, achievers can be so focused on results that they overlook issues like interpersonal relationships, scrambling over other people to move up, or even ignore ethics considerations. In environments with birthright tendencies, status derives from inherent characteristics like family background and connections, as well as age and seniority. It's not so much what you've done that gets you ahead, it's how much influence you have that matters. In birthright contexts, people tend to be fairly formal and aware of hierarchy. Young people are careful to show respect to older people. They may open doors for them or carry things for them. Children show respect to their parents, who may control decisions like the career they choose or who they marry. In birthright companies, junior employees are more likely to use their superiors' titles rather than their first names. They get ahead by showing loyalty, working the system, and creating relationships with people of influence over time. They work hard to maintain good relationships with people around them while making their superiors look good. An advantage of birthright environments is that junior and senior people don't compete with one another, so the environment is cooperative. Juniors respect their place in the hierarchy. Executives mentor their employees, actively teaching them the ropes and promoting their careers. The disadvantage is that talented young people may have to wait a long time before being recognized, and people may get to the top through seniority or family connections rather than skills and intelligence. The Universalism Particularism dimension reflects people's attitudes towards authority and following rules. Universalists think that rules should be followed in general, to keep things stable and avoid confusion. For Universalists, allowing exceptions seems dangerous. Extreme Universalists will follow a bad rule rather than break it. If you take care to park inside the lines in an empty parking lot, you have Universalist tendencies. The field of accounting tends to attract Universalists, people who respect existing structures and are willing to work within them. Universalists are reliable team members and honest partners. They tend to follow procedure and live up to their commitments. On a team, they'll make sure things get done according to specifications. At the same time, they can be inflexible and easily unsettled by changes. Particularists choose whether or not to follow rules based on the situation. They say things like, "I know it's the law, but I'm in a hurry," or "I'm going to do it just this once." They may choose not to follow rules they consider silly or unnecessary, or rules created by groups whose authority they don't respect. Oppressive government control often results in particularism because people don't respect laws they consider unfair. Imagine that you're driving in a deserted area at night with no traffic, and you come to a red light. If you go through it, you have particularist tendencies. Particularists are creative problem solvers and are good troubleshooters. The field of marketing tends to attract particularists, creative people who enjoy challenges and are good at finding ways of looking at things. Particularists can have difficulty working in a highly structured environment, though, and their insistence on challenging rules they don't like can cause clashes with bureaucracy. The Universalism particularism dimension can be tricky because particularists often seem very law-abiding initially. That's because they choose to follow rules that make sense to them. So they may follow traffic rules carefully, for example, but underreport their income for tax purposes. To know whether someone's a universalist or particularist, it's a good idea to ask questions about a variety of different contexts. The relationship task dimension describes the systems people rely on to accomplish their goals. In environments with strong relationship tendencies, people carefully cultivate a social network, and they get things done by using their relationships. Personal connections are crucial, and people's associates are involved in many parts of their lives. People have close, lifelong relationships and spend most of their recreational time with members of their social network. In Korea, elementary school reunions are popular, and there are special websites to help people find their former classmates. Relationship-oriented people perceive everything as interrelated. In presentations, they may ramble and digress from the point. They might answer a yes-no question by saying, "Well, now that's an interesting point. Let's talk about that." They begin meetings with extended socializing and move on to business gradually. In partnership discussions, they start by making friends and let topics evolve naturally. Relationship-oriented companies will only do business with companies they know and trust and take a long time to get to know their business associates. Relationship-oriented people are good at creating strong interpersonal dynamics. They're loyal teammates and will work hard to make a relationship work out. But because they're so focused on the personal connection, they may take a long time to get down to the task at hand. In task-oriented environments, people get things done by going through a process or working a system on their own rather than relying on a social network. Task-oriented people get things done by following a logical process rather than through their social networks. They may have many casual friends who are involved in a single part of their lives. The person they play tennis with may not know the people they go to church with or the members of the clubs they belong to. Task-oriented people don't spend much time on social preliminaries in meetings. They like to get right down to business. They tend to have carefully prepared agendas and to want to stick to them. They don't like digressions. They want discussions to stay on point. In presentations, they stick to their slides and answer questions succinctly. Task-oriented team members can be counted on to support their ideas with facts and logic. They aren't as good at establishing a strong working relationship with others, and stalemates can occur when two sets of ideas are in conflict and neither is willing to give in. The Individualism-Collectivism dimension describes attitudes towards collaboration and reward. In context with individualist tendencies, individuals are responsible for completing tasks and accountable for the results. A single person may have decision-making authority. Individualists will lobby hard for something they believe in rather than just to go along with the group. The complex menu choices in American restaurants demonstrate the importance of individual preferences in the U.S. Individualists don't mind spending some time by themselves and may even crave personal time. In France, for example, it's common for people to sit, eat, or read alone in parks and restaurants. Individualists prefer to divide up tasks, work on them alone, and then meet with teammates to pull things together. They have a relatively weak sense of group affiliation, and in companies, one person may be assigned to many different groups over the course of their career. Individualists make decisions quickly, and a good decision-maker can institute bold and innovative policies. A bad one can be a disaster, though, if they make bad decisions or controversial ones that others don't support. Collectivist groups accomplish tasks together. Decisions are made through group consensus. No one individual has responsibility or gets credit or blame for an important decision. Praising one person on a team would be considered an insult to the rest of the team. Collectivists put group harmony first, and they'll abandon an idea rather than fight for it to keep the group together. They also prefer to spend nearly all their time with other people. In Korea, for example, people will sit through lunch with a friend even if they've already eaten, so the friend won't have to eat alone. In Japan, a group may order the same dish for everyone because individual preferences just aren't that important. Collectivist groups have a strong sense of group identity. A team may remain together for many years as new projects are assigned to it. Team members are likely to socialize together outside of work and have strong interpersonal relationships. Teams tend to be protective of their members, even weak ones, and avoid sharing information with outsiders, even within their own companies. Building consensus can take a long time, but once a decision is made, collectivists tend to implement quickly because details were ironed out during decision-making, and everyone is on board. Any collectivist decision has been thoroughly vetted from all angles. The short-term, long-term dimension describes attitudes towards the present and the past. In highly short-term environments, the past is history. It's not considered particularly relevant to today. People focus on the present and the future, and they're motivated to identify and take advantage of opportunities. People with a short-term focus aren't highly committed to people, places, or things. They're happy to move to a house that's closer to work, or to a city with a good job opportunity. They don't stress too much about saying goodbye to old friends. They look forward to meeting new ones. High-tech companies like Apple or Microsoft are good examples of this short-term approach. New product models come out frequently, and they're sold on the basis of new features. If a product is a flop, they replace it with a new one. People with short-term tendencies have a high tolerance for risk. If one idea doesn't work out, they figure they'll just change direction. They're innovative and responsive, but they can also be impulsive and make decisions without due consideration. In places with long-term tendencies, traditions are highly valued and new directions are undertaken carefully. People focus on the past as well as the present when they consider the future, and they avoid compromising their reputation. People with a long-term focus are very committed to the people in their lives and prefer to avoid disruption in their lifestyle. They're likely to rent a house for a while to be sure they like it before buying, and to stay in a bad job to avoid leaving their family and friends. They dislike risk, and they feel that a bad decision will stay with them for a long time. Gerber Baby Food is a good example of a company with a long-term focus. In an industry where trust is vital, Gerber's image is based on its history of reliability. The picture of the baby on its labels has been used since 1926. People with long-term preferences tend to be stable and thoughtful and are careful to analyze situations thoroughly, but they can be overcautious, and their hyper-analytical tendencies can lead to paralysis by analysis. The indirectness-directness dimension describes explicitness in communication. Indirect speakers are very careful about the effect their words might have on other people. They avoid criticizing others directly. They use somewhat vague and rambling communication to convey a general feeling about the subject and preserve interpersonal relationships. Indirect speakers convey their opinions and disagreement indirectly or through an intermediary. Being polite is more important than making a point, and they prefer to deal with conflict privately and in a relaxed context like a meal. Indirect speakers consider criticizing a person's ideas confrontational and insulting, and they avoid it through a variety of strategies. In India, it's inappropriate for a junior employee to criticize a superior's ideas to their face, so they may agree on the surface but just not carry the idea out. To recognize when yes really means no, you may have to look for subtle clues, like an uncertain tone of voice or lack of eye contact. Indirect speakers are tactful and diplomatic and highly sophisticated at reading and responding to other people's feelings, but their unwillingness to express negative opinions can lead to confusion and delays. For direct speakers, the goal is to get the point across as clearly as possible. Their communication is specific, organized, and straightforward. Direct speakers don't hesitate to voice their opinions or disagreement. They don't consider disagreeing with someone's ideas to be a personal attack. They can disagree openly with a friend, and they don't take criticism of their own ideas personally. In France, saying, "I disagree with you," and offering a contrary perspective is a way of showing you're engaged in the conversation and know how to think for yourself. It's easy to know what direct speakers are thinking because they express it clearly. They may offend indirect colleagues with their bluntness, though, and cause insult by criticizing others' ideas. Because they take other people's comments at face value, they may miss subtle signs of negativity from indirect colleagues and be surprised when something they thought was approved doesn't happen. The expressive neutral dimension has to do with how much emotion people convey. Expressive people show their emotion, in private and in public. Their body language and facial expressions are easy to read, even from a distance. They may get loud when expressing a strong emotion. They get problems out into the open quickly. Italians are well known for their expressive tendencies. Expressives are enthusiastic and easy to read, and it's easy to tell when they're engaged. Extreme expressives may become emotional in crisis situations and need to calm down before they can address the problem. Neutral people control the amount of emotion they express. Their body language is subdued and may not show strong reactions, even when they express them verbally. Swedes and Germans are well known for being neutral. Neutrals tend to have a calm demeanor at all times and remain in control of themselves in crisis situations. They don't give much feedback during conversation or presentations, so they can be difficult to read. They may come across as unenthusiastic or disengaged. The schedule flow dimension describes people's attitudes towards time management and organization. Schedule-oriented people view time as linear, as a series of events that happen one after another. They organize their time according to detailed schedules, and they value punctuality. They prefer to complete one task before beginning the next. They like to divide tasks up into equal parts and to do the same amount of work each day, taking care not to run out of time at the end. They're the people who show up for the meeting 5 minutes early and wonder why everyone else isn't there yet. They often end up as the ones who coordinate team meetings and take notes since they're so focused on completing things. Schedule-oriented people are organized and reliable. They make great organizers on teams, but they don't like surprises and get anxious and frustrated when things don't go according to plan. Sudden changes can leave them confused as to how to proceed. Flow-oriented people perceive events as happening all at once. They tend to multitask and fit their schedule to the task rather than try to fit a task into their schedule. They may arrive late for a meeting, still talking on their cell phone. They tend to want to talk until a matter is resolved rather than stopping at the designated time, and to push later meetings back if one goes overtime. They tend to do a lot of the work for a project just before the deadline. Flow-oriented people are creative and flexible. They're highly adaptable to changing conditions and don't mind moving things around. They may not have just a plan B, but a plan C and a plan D as well, and they take uncertainty in stride. At the same time, they can be disorganized and unreliable and tend to miss deadlines. They don't do well in highly restrictive environments. They need some flexibility to do their best work.